On Mother's Day, I received a diamond necklace. My son looked at me with genuine eyes and said, "Mom, you deserve the best." A few days later, I found a loan application in his car. He had forged my signature and mortgaged my house without my knowledge. That expensive-looking diamond necklace? Just like everything else he'd said that day, it was a lie. He thought I was old, half-blind, and still soft-hearted. He was wrong. I knew everything. I just didn't rush to expose him, because I was waiting for the moment he'd finally lay all his cards on the table. I had assumed this year's Mother's Day would pass quietly like every year before it. Maybe a perfunctory phone call. Maybe a text. Maybe nothing at all. Just another day. For the past 5 years, Josh and Chelsea hadn't really shown up for this occasion. But early this Saturday morning, just as the sky began to lighten, my phone rang. "Mom, we're coming by for lunch," Josh said, his voice a little rushed but trying to sound casual. "Got you a little gift. Hope you like it." I paused for a second, then said, "Okay. I'll make lunch." After I hung up, I felt an odd flicker of nerves. Sunlight was streaming in through the kitchen window. The lilac bush out in the yard had just started to bloom. I pulled the beef I'd been saving out of the freezer and laid out the embroidered white tablecloth, the one I only ever used for holidays. Just before noon, Josh's car pulled up in the driveway. He got out and called cheerfully, "Happy Mother's Day, Mom." Chelsea followed close behind, carrying a neatly wrapped jewelry box. She wore a pale blue dress that didn't look cheap and a brighter lipstick than usual. I noticed her quietly shutting the trunk with extra care, like she didn't want me to see what was inside. They brought in more than just the gift box. There was also a bouquet and a bottle of white wine. I took the items from them with a smile, but something in me tensed. "What's this?" I asked as I sat down and opened the jewelry box. Inside was a delicate necklace, a fine silver chain that shimmered like a line of water. In the center hung a sparkling diamond pendant that caught the afternoon sun just right. Josh grinned as he sat next to me. "Isn't it beautiful? A friend of mine in New York helped me pick it out. The moment I saw it, I knew it was perfect for you." "It's lovely," I said softly, brushing the pendant with my fingertips. Felt cool and smooth. Chelsea, placing the wine in the fridge, turned and smiled. "Josh spent all week going back and forth on which one to choose. He said this one was just right for you. Simple, elegant." Josh laughed, even brighter now. "Wasn't cheap either. $5,000. But hey, for my mom? Totally worth it." They were in perfect sync, their voices layered with warmth and affection. It's not like I've never received gifts before, but it had been a long time since anyone had gone out of their way like this for me. I looked down at the necklace and suddenly felt a lump in my throat. Not because of the price, but because for one brief moment I believed they remembered that I was still the mother of this family. Lunch was livelier than usual. I made roast beef and baked potatoes. Chelsea said the seasoning reminded her of something from a fancy restaurant. I knew she was just being polite, but I still smiled. Halfway through the meal, Josh raised his glass. "Mom, you're the most important person in our lives. Truly." I set down my knife and fork and looked at him. My only son. 35 years old now. Working in real estate sales. His job history was a revolving door. Some months were better than others. He'd moved out at 18, and after his father passed, he rarely looked back. Apart from the occasional loan request, we barely saw each other. But in that moment, I saw a flicker of the boy he used to be. The one who ran to me crying when he scraped his knee, the one who wrote "to the best mom ever" on birthday cards. As I washed the dishes afterward, Chelsea spoke quietly to Josh in the living room. I didn't catch much, just one line. "She looks really happy. It will work." I turned off the faucet, dried my hands, and stared out at the maple tree in the yard. The wind rustled the leaves, like voices whispering just out of reach. Something twisted in my chest, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. That night, I hung the necklace on the mirror of my nightstand. The pendant glowed faintly under the lamp, and I stared at it for a long time. I told myself I should stop doubting. At my age, getting a thoughtful gift was enough. Maybe they really were changing. Maybe it was time to let go of old wounds and believe that family could remember your worth, even if they'd once forgotten it. I turned off the light, thinking if his father were here, he'd be proud. What I didn't know was that the real Mother's Day gift happened in the car, after they left. I woke up early the next morning. Sunlight streamed through the curtains and struck the mirror, catching the pendant on the necklace and scattering a sharp glint across the room. like a cat's eye staring me down. I stared back at it for a few seconds and out of nowhere a familiar phrase came to mind. Something Loretta was fond of saying, the shinier something is, the less likely it's real. Loretta was my next-door neighbor. We'd known each other for nearly 20 years. She used to work in a jewelry store, retired now, but she had been the head of sales before she left. She had a sharp eye, for people, for merchandise, for motives. Too sharp sometimes. Sharp enough to make you uncomfortable. I opened the window and saw her out in her front yard, tending to her rose bushes. She wore a wide-brimmed straw hat and trimmed the stems with practiced ease. I stepped down the porch and called out, "Morning. Gorgeous sunshine today." She looked up at me. "You're glowing, Evelyn. Had a good Mother's Day." I walked over and pulled the necklace out of my bathrobe pocket. "This," I said, holding it out, "was a gift from Josh. He said he had it brought in from a boutique in New York." Loretta squinted at it for a moment, weighed the pendant lightly between her fingers, and then peered closely at the diamond. After a long pause she finally said almost lazily, "Looks nice. But are you sure you want to know what it really is?" I hesitated. "You don't think it's a diamond?" He handed it back. Her tone was even. "Can't say for certain, but from experience, real diamonds don't usually come on chains like that. And if it were from a boutique in New York, I doubt he'd have given it to you in a basic plastic box." She paused, then looked at me directly. "If you want peace of mind, I can take you to my old store tomorrow. The owner's still there and so is all the equipment." A tightness crept into my chest. Not because I was afraid the necklace was fake, but because I didn't want to face the possibility that my son had lied to me. "Sure," I said with a forced smile. "Might as well check." The next morning, Loretta showed up right on time to pick me up. We drove across town to the coastal shopping district, pulling up in front of a small old-fashioned jewelry store. A sign over the door read, "Since 1953. The window displays held antique brooches and pocket watches, dated, but the place was clean and well kept. A man in his 60s greeted us inside. His name was Harold and he'd been Loretta's boss. I handed him the necklace. He put on gloves, examined it under a magnifying stand, tapped at the metal with a tester pen, and finally slipped the pendant into a blue light detector. Less than 5 minutes passed before he said quietly, "This isn't a diamond. It's cubic zirconia, lab-made. Retail value is maybe $45 to $50. Cheap stuff. People buy it all the time to pass off as something nicer." My mind went completely blank for a second. I nodded. "Thank you." Back in the car, Loretta didn't start the engine right away. She just looked at me. "Want to talk?" I stared out at the parking lot's exit. Cars moved in and out, each one carrying someone's mother. Or someone's son. "I don't know if he meant to deceive me," I said quietly. "Maybe he didn't know it was fake. Maybe a friend tricked him." Loretta said nothing, just turned her head and looked at me. I gave her a small smile. "He probably doesn't know much about jewelry. Maybe he just wanted to do something nice." "Maybe," she finally said. "But Evelyn, if it was just a nice gesture, why say it was from a New York boutique? Why mention the price?" I had no answer. Because I wasn't sure either. We got back home around noon. Before she left, Loretta patted my shoulder and said, "You don't have to decide anything today. But just remember, if you don't learn to see people clearly, you'll keep getting fooled." I nodded. After she left, I went inside and tucked the necklace away in the bottom drawer of my vanity. I didn't confront Josh. I didn't even call. I told myself maybe Loretta was reading too much into it. Maybe it was all a misunderstanding. But that night, lying in bed, I heard a small voice inside me say, "You don't not know. You just don't want to be sure." The pendant still hung in front of the mirror, catching the light. But this time it didn't feel like a cat's eye anymore. It felt like a warning. I had just come out of the grocery store when my phone rang, before I even had the chance to shut the trunk. "Hey Mom, I'm outside your place," Josh said cheerfully on the other end. "You home? I wanted to drop something off for you." "I just left the store," I replied. "Give me 10 minutes. "No problem, I'll wait," he said and hung up. I packed the frozen items into an insulated bag and hit the gas, heading home. The usual route would take me through downtown, but something unsettled me, couldn't explain it, so I turned off early and cut through a side street. I got back 5 minutes sooner than expected. As I turned the corner and parked, I saw Josh's car still out front. He wasn't inside the house. Instead, he was leaning against his car on the phone, talking loudly enough that I could hear him from inside mine. "Relax," he said with a laugh. "She can't tell the difference. That necklace? She's got it hanging by her bed like it's some kind of treasure." I froze. My hand slipped off the door handle. "I'm telling you, once this part works, the next step is getting her to add me to the house deed. $800,000 property, fully paid off. Once she's gone, it's ours, no strings attached." He paused, then let out a chuckle, his voice dripping with smugness. "Think about it. We spent $50 on a fake necklace and we're about to walk away with a whole damn house. Show me a better return on investment." I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. My chest felt like someone had ground their heel into it. In that moment, I couldn't convince myself it was just a joke. His tone, the slickness, the ease. It wasn't how you talk about your mother. It was how you talk about a target. Slowly, I opened the car door. My feet hit the driveway like they weighed 100 pounds each. Josh spotted me instantly. He hung up fast. The smile on his face barely lasted a second before turning into startled panic. "Mom? I thought you weren't back yet." "Side street wasn't backed up," I said as calmly as I could. "Got home early." He switched gears smoothly, that familiar performance flickering across his face. "Did you get a lot at the store? I'll help you carry it in." "No need. It's all in the trunk." I paused, then forced a light tone. "Didn't you say you brought something for me?" Like he just remembered, he reached into the passenger seat and pulled out a paper bag. "Yeah, I remembered you saying you liked that lavender tea. Found it in town and thought I'd surprise you." I took the bag. The scent of the tea leaves wafted out, floral, pleasant, and now oddly nauseating. I stood at the front door, suddenly not wanting to go inside. "How've you been lately?" I asked. Josh blinked, surprised. "Me? I've been okay. Work's hectic. We're wrapping up the quarterly numbers. Chelsea's been doing wedding gigs again. You know how it is, just trying to make ends meet." I looked him straight in the eye, searching for a flicker of guilt. But his face held steady, maybe even wore a hint of tired sincerity. "Tell me something," I said, keeping my voice as level as I could. "If one day I just wasn't here anymore, what would you do?" Josh looked thrown for a moment, then laughed. "Mom, what kind of question is that? You're healthy as ever. Don't be morbid." "I've just been wondering," I went on, "would you move in the next day, renovate the place, put your and Chelsea's names on everything, and forget all about the woman who lived here before you?" This time his expression cracked, just for a second. "Mom, what are you saying?" His voice dropped. "What kind of thing is that to assume? How could you think that of me?" I stared at him, tempted, so tempted, to throw that recorded phone call in his face. But I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe I was still too angry. Maybe I wasn't ready to hear the next lie. "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile. "Just talking nonsense." He didn't stay long. Said he had a meeting with a client and took off in a hurry. I stood at the front door and watched his car disappear around the corner. Then I pulled out my phone and saved the voice recording into a locked folder. Yes, I'd recorded it. The second I heard his voice through the open car door, I'd hit record. And now I knew. He hadn't been confused about the necklace. This wasn't a botched attempt at affection. It was a plan. A clean, calculated move to use my emotion as a stepping stone to a piece of real estate. I dropped the bag of tea straight into the kitchen trash. Then I walked into the living room and stared at the framed photo on the wall. Josh, maybe 7 or 8 years old, grinning like an angel next to his father. I stood there for a long time, one thought ringing in my mind, sharp and clear. "I'm not misunderstanding anything. I know exactly what you're doing." After that day, I spent several nights listening to the recording over and over again. Josh's voice came through with chilling clarity, every word sharp as glass. Especially that line, $50 for a house? Best deal I've ever made. Each time I heard it, something inside me turned colder. I didn't go to the police. I didn't even tell Loretta. I told myself I'd give Josh one more chance. Not because I still naively trusted him, but because I needed to hear it from his own mouth. I needed to see what his next move would be. I needed him to show me who he really was. A week later he texted me. Said he had something to talk about face to face. Said Chelsea was out of town on a shoot and he'd be coming alone. My heart didn't race. Just thudded, slow and heavy. Like it was bracing for impact. At 6 p.m., The doorbell rang just as I was carrying out a tray of baked salmon and vegetables from the kitchen. Josh stepped in with that kind smile he liked to wear. "Wow, smells amazing," he said. "You're still the best cook I know." I smiled faintly. "Just some simple food." We sat down to eat. He kept the conversation light, casual, trying to act natural. But I could see his eyes drifting again and again toward the file cabinet in the living room. The one where I kept property deeds, tax documents, and bank statements. Halfway through the meal, he set down his fork and knife, cleared his throat. "Mom, I've been thinking about something lately. I've been worried about you." "Worried?" I asked, drying my hands on a napkin. "I'm doing fine." "You are." He nodded. "But you're getting older. Living alone. What if something happened? Who would even know?" I looked at him. "You're saying, you want to move back in and take care of me?" He waved his hand quickly. No, I mean I hope you stay healthy and independent for a long time. I just think maybe it's time to plan ahead. Like your house. It's still under your name only, right?" So here it was. The real entree of tonight's dinner. "Yes," I answered slowly. "It was your father's. We worked half our lives to pay for it." "I know," he said. "I just think, maybe it's time to put things in order. Avoid future hassle. Like putting my name on the deed. Or transferring it now while you can still decide for yourself. I'm not trying to take anything, just thinking practically. We're family after all." I laughed, not the warm kind. The kind you laugh after hearing the same excuse 100 times. "I read a story recently," I said slowly, "about a woman who got tricked by her own son into signing over her house. Said it was for convenience. Next thing she knew, she was out on the street." Josh's face darkened. "What are you saying?" He leaned back in his chair, voice dropping. "You think I'd do something like that to you?" "I'm just talking about a story," I said, locking eyes with him. "But if you're not that kind of person, why the rush to get my signature?" A flicker of panic crossed his face, but it vanished quickly, replaced by irritation. "Mom, what's going on with you?" His tone turned sharp. "You've been acting so guarded lately. Suspicious of everything I say. You're freaking yourself out." "No," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You're the one hiding things from me." I met his gaze. "That necklace you said came from a boutique in New York? The one your friend picked out?" I paused. "Turns out it's a $50 fake." He froze. Then shifted into his next act. Offended son. "Are you serious?" He raised his voice slightly, eyes wide. "That's what this is about. My friend told me it was real. How was I supposed to know? Now you're questioning whether I'm even a decent son? Like this is my fault for trusting someone." I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. "Is it that you trusted him? Or that you thought I wouldn't know the difference, so it didn't matter?" That hit something. Josh's face hardened. "What are you saying?" he snapped. "You think I'm ungrateful? You think I'm trying to scam you out of a house? Do you know how hurtful that is?" I stayed silent. He leaned forward, his voice turning sharp, fast, angry. "Maybe living alone this long has made you paranoid. I gave you that necklace because I thought it would make you happy, not so I could get interrogated like some criminal." He laughed bitterly and stood up. "Fine. I won't bring you gifts anymore. I'll stop visiting. If being alone is what you want, I'll make it easier for you." Here it was again. That same tired manipulation, the emotional blackmail he thought I wouldn't catch. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I saw it clearly. "If you really cared about me," I said, rising from my seat and gathering the plates, "you wouldn't be trying to push me into signing anything. You let me feel safe. Instead, you're trying to wear me down." His face went rigid. "I get it. You're old and scared and now you think everyone's out to get you. But not everyone wants to hurt you. I'm your son. How could you think I'd do that to you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. As he reached the door, he turned and threw one last line over his shoulder. "Believe whatever you want. I was trying to help you. But if I'm just a scammer to you, then fine. Grow old on your own." The door slammed shut behind him. The house was quiet again. Just the fading warmth of dinner and the lingering scent of caramelized glaze in the air. I sat down on the sofa, running a thumb slowly over the record button on my phone. I felt calm. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a moment of weakness. Josh had made up his mind about who I was. A vulnerable, senile old woman he could manipulate at will. But he was wrong. I'm not senile. And I'm not the kind of mom who gets led around by a leash. I'm not someone who makes decisions on impulse. Especially not after 60. If there's one thing I've learned with age, it's this. Crying doesn't fix anything. Panic doesn't save you. What solves problems, what really saves you, is clarity. Control. The next morning I skipped my usual trip to the farmer's market. Instead I called Loretta and asked if she could come over for tea. By the time she arrived I had already brewed a fresh pot of Earl Grey, and the scent of a lemon tart still warm from the oven filled the kitchen. As soon as she walked through the door I played her the recording. She listened without a word. Not a single interruption. Josh's voice echoed through the room again and again. She can't tell what's real. $50 for a house. That's the best deal ever. When the audio ended, Loretta was silent for a few seconds. Then she spoke. Evelyn, I know this isn't easy to hear, but you can't wait any longer. He's not thinking about crossing a line. He already has. I nodded slowly. I know. Are you going to the police? Not yet, I said, sipping my tea. First I need to seal the cracks in this ship. I don't want to wait until it's sinking to realize I should have patched the hull. Loretta understood. She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. Karen Price. She was one of my closest friends in college. Retired now, but she spent her whole career handling trusts and estates. She's sharp as hell and has a good heart. I studied the card. Clean, bold typeface, the name of her law office stamped across the top. She's still taking cases? I asked. Only by referral. Loretta gave me a knowing wink. And your situation? She'll take it. That afternoon I called and booked an appointment for Friday. Friday morning I sat across from Karen Price in her office. She wore a dark green suit, gold-rimmed glasses, and had the calm efficiency of a senior branch manager, the kind I used to work with years ago. I told her everything. The fake necklace. The phone call. The dinner where Josh tried to get me to sign over the house. She didn't flinch. Just nodded slowly, then said, You did exactly the right thing, Evelyn. What you need now is a living trust, plus a new will. I blinked. I always thought those were for rich people. She gave a small smile. No. Trusts aren't about wealth. They're about protecting your life, your home, your freedom. She drew a quick diagram on a legal pad, explaining as she went. Right now, your house is still in your name, which means you control it as long as you're mentally competent. But if you're suddenly hospitalized or diagnosed with cognitive decline, and there's no trust in place, your legal heirs can petition to take control. Especially if they've got a doctor's note. She tapped the desk gently with her finger. Here's what we do. 1. Create an irrevocable trust and transfer the house into it. 2. Appoint a trustee you trust. 3. Draft a new will that specifically disinherits Josh and Chelsea. I hesitated. Isn't disinheriting your own child a little extreme? Karen took off her glasses and looked at me. Evelyn, your son is already making plans for your house after you're dead. And you're still here, healthy, lucid, and very much alive. He's not waiting. So why are you? I took a deep breath. Let's do it. She nodded and began drafting the paperwork. When I signed, my hand trembled just slightly, not from regret but from something else. A quiet, unfamiliar sense of control. I used to think aging meant surrendering. That you had to learn to let go. To accept being sidelined, accept that others would make the big decisions from here on out. But in that moment I realized something. As long as you can still see people for who they really are, you still have a choice. You can still act. You can still protect what's yours. That afternoon I returned home and pulled out everything I needed. The house deed, my birth certificate, my husband's death certificate, and the old will. I placed them all neatly in a new document folder and locked it in the drawer. Then I locked the drawer itself and tucked the key inside an old shoebox in the laundry room. After dinner I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. My hair was gray now. The lines on my face had deepened. But behind all of that I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Clarity. Strength. Resolve. And in a quiet voice I said to my reflection, You want all this? Then you better be ready to pay the price. After that explosive evening Josh disappeared. No calls. No texts. 2 full weeks of silence. I didn't reach out either. The house returned to the quiet stillness I'd grown used to in my early years of living alone. I thought he might try to ghost the whole thing, leave it hanging in silence. But then one morning while I was out in the garden trimming the roses, I heard a knock at the front door. I put down the shears and opened it. There he was, Josh. In his hands, a box of pumpkin pie, my favorite, and a bottle of Italian dessert wine. "Mom," he said softly. "I missed you." I paused but stepped aside and let him in. "So," I said, placing the wine in the fridge. "What are we talking about this time?" "Nothing." He kept that apologetic tone. I came to say I'm sorry." I turned to look at him. He was seated at the table, head bowed. "My attitude that day, I was wrong," he said quietly. "I've just been under so much pressure. Chelsea's work isn't stable and I'm juggling loans. I thought, if I could settle things on your end it would help all of us. But I see now I pushed too hard." I didn't respond right away. He looked up at me. His eyes were slightly red. "You're my mom. I shouldn't have treated you like that." He rarely called me mom like that anymore. Not unless he wanted something or was asking for forgiveness. "It's not that I doubted you wanted to help," I said calmly. "I just wondered if, before you decided to help me, you calculated what you could gain from it." He lowered his head again. Slowly nodded. "And now?" I asked. "Do you still want me to add your name to the house?" He shook his head. "No, really. I just want you to be happy. I know I was too aggressive before. But I've been thinking, we're all we've got. I shouldn't let a house tear us apart." It was well delivered. The remorse. The sincerity. Almost convincing. That day he took me for a walk through town. Said he wanted to check if the wisteria had bloomed yet. He even brought up a story from his childhood, when he tried to grow strawberries in the backyard and ended up bawling after a bee sting. I thought he'd forgotten that memory. But he recalled it in perfect detail, even laughed and said, "You were like a superhero." Grabbed ice and cursed out the bees like they'd offended the queen. And for a moment, I wanted to believe him. I really did. Loretta called later that night. "I heard he dropped by," she said. "Watch his actions, not his apologies. Remorse is real only if it changes what he does next." I nodded, said nothing more. Then came the third visit. A Sunday afternoon. He offered to take me to a little lakeside restaurant outside town. Said it would be nice to get out. On the way back he stopped to get gas. While he was inside, I sat in the passenger seat, idly rummaging through the glove box for gum. Instead, my fingers brushed a hard envelope tucked into the side compartment. I hesitated, then pulled it out. Loan application, property collateral program. The first page bore a painfully familiar address. My address. And on the signature line, there was my name. In a younger version of my handwriting. Flourished, elegant. The kind I used to sign when I was younger. The kind Josh had seen. Had practiced even jokingly once. Only now, it looked like he'd mastered it. My fingertips went cold. The file showed he'd attempted to use my house as collateral for a rapid approval loan. Amount requested, $500,000. Purpose listed, urgent family financial support. I closed the folder, my hands trembling. When Josh returned, I had already put everything back where it was. I sat upright, composed. He got in, cheerful as ever. "Gas station took forever, they only take cash. Nice breeze today though. How about a movie when we get home?" I turned and smiled slightly. "Sounds good." I didn't say anything more. Because what needed saying wasn't for his ears anymore. That night, the first thing I did when I got home was call Karen. "I need to lock down the deed completely," I said. "And next I want to start documenting everything. Preparing a file." She paused. Then said evenly, "You've finally made up your mind?" "Yes," I said. This wasn't another push. This was an ambush. He wants to get it done before I even realize. I hung up and stood by the window watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. Earlier that day he'd called me mom. Talked about bees and strawberry plants. He'd sounded like that little boy again. But he didn't understand. Memories aren't for profit. They're for remembering. He thought I was moved. But the truth is, I was just waiting for him to finish the performance. I used to think the most painful moment was hearing Josh scheme over the phone about my house. I was wrong. The real heartbreak came later, when I realized he could sit across from me, speak with warmth, offer me tea and say, "Mom, your happiness means the most," all while forging my signature and trying to cash out my home behind my back. That night I barely slept. My mind kept replaying the way he spoke, the way he smiled, that tender phrase slipping so easily from his mouth. Yes. Your happiness means the most. He said it as he was filling out a loan application with my name and address, like my trust was a signature away from being his personal inheritance. The next morning I went straight to Karen's office. No small talk. No baked goods. I opened my bag and pulled out the photo evidence of the loan application I'd found in Josh's car, along with a fresh audio recording. Karen examined every page slowly and carefully. When she finally closed the folder, her voice was measured and calm. We can move in two directions. First, we'll file an immediate freeze order with the property registrar and declare any unauthorized mortgage activity invalid. Second, we begin compiling a formal incident log. Every audio clip, every file, every interaction. From now on, every step becomes part of your legal record. I nodded. I'm done waiting for his next move. She pushed another set of documents toward me. One more recommendation: install a recording device in your car. If he ever speaks more directly, threatens you, outlines any plan, we'll have hard evidence. I'm not soft anymore, I said quietly. This isn't misunderstanding. This is him peeling me apart layer by layer. We agreed to submit the official legal filing the following week. At the same time, I began working with her to establish an irrevocable trust. Under the new structure, the house would legally remain mine to live in. But no sale, no loan, no signature would be valid without my express written consent with a lawyer present. No one, not even family, could touch it without crossing a legal minefield. By the time I left, I no longer felt like a passive old woman guarding the door. I felt like someone who finally picked up the shield. Josh, meanwhile, was still playing the role of devoted son. That evening he showed up again with a bottle of red wine, asking if we could look through old photos together. He sat on the couch flipping through black and white pictures of me and his father, saying softly, "I was so lucky as a kid. You and Dad gave me such a great home." I sat across from him, smiling faintly. "You have your own home now, just one where you're the one in charge." He smiled. Gently. "But I never forgot what you and Dad taught me." I didn't answer. I slipped my hand into my pocket and pressed the button on the recorder. "Mom," he paused, shifting his tone, "have you really not thought about just getting the house paperwork in order? I'm not rushing you. I just worry if something happens, it'll be a nightmare trying to deal with all the red tape." I gave a soft, uncertain-sounding hum. "I've been thinking about it. But I worry, what if I make that decision and you all shut me out afterward?" Josh chuckled. "Mom, we'd never do that. You're the most important person in this family. Who would dare?" He let that sit for a beat. Then softer, darker. "But if you keep being this difficult, we might just have to find our own way through, right?" My stomach knotted. "What do you mean?" I asked, locking eyes with him. He just laughed louder this time. "I'm kidding. God, you're so tense. I came here to drink wine with you." He raised his glass and swirled the liquid like we were toasting something good. But I knew it wasn't a joke. Not really. A few days later I played the recording back, and this time I caught what I hadn't noticed before. Right after he stood up to go to the kitchen just for a moment, he passed near the recorder. His voice, low, almost under his breath, was unmistakably clear once I enhanced the audio. "Why the hell can't she just die already? I wouldn't have to go through all this bullshit." It hit like a nail. Slow and cold, driving deep into the center of my chest. I paused the recording. Saved it to Karen's legal archive. Then I made a phone call to the local police. Not to file formal charges. Not yet. But to officially document the threat. I told them someone had forged my signature and attempted to mortgage my home. I was filing a preventative notice, retaining the right to pursue criminal charges. The officer on the other end was calm and professional. He confirmed the report, then advised I could request a restriction against potentially exploitative family transactions, especially where there might be disputes over medical or financial authority in the future. After I hung up, I leaned back in the chair and let out a long breath. Outside, the sky had gone dark. Only the motion sensor light in the yard remained, glowing faintly against the shut front door. Josh had called me Mom that night. Talked about old memories. Painted himself in the colors of nostalgia. But what he never understood was this. Memories are for remembering. Not for monetizing. He thought I was touched. But really, I was just waiting for the final scene to end. I chose a bright, clear morning on purpose. Not because the weather lifted my mood, but because Karen said, it's best to let the sunlight witness it. He came with me. I brought everything. The proof of the living trust. The updated copy of my will. The notarized disinheritance declaration. And most importantly, the clause that formally removed Josh from my estate. When Josh opened the door, he wore his usual smile, but his eyes paused, just briefly, on Karen standing behind me. Mom? You're early, he said, stepping aside. Come on in. Chelsea just made coffee. Chelsea peeked out from the kitchen. The moment she saw us, me with the document bag, Karen by my side, her face stiffened. I didn't exchange pleasantries. I walked straight to the coffee table, unzipped the folder and pulled out the top document, the one with the red letterhead. Josh, I said evenly. I'm here to inform you of something official. His smile didn't fade yet, but I saw a flicker of unease behind his eyes. Official. Karen sat beside me, her voice calm and measured. Ms. Evelyn has finalized all of her estate arrangements. As of today, her property, assets, and legal authorizations are under the protection of a living trust. Any transaction made without her written consent, under legal supervision, will be considered a breach of law. The corners of Josh's mouth twitched slightly. What is this supposed to mean? I slid the document across the table and read aloud, clear and deliberate. Clause 7. Josh Barnes and his spouse Chelsea Barnes shall be excluded from all forms of inheritance and are hereby legally disinherited. This status will be reflected in all official probate and estate records. The air went still. Chelsea was the first to react, standing up with a sharp breath. Evelyn, you must be confused. We've never even said we wanted your inheritance. I turned to her. You didn't have to. You just stood there and watched him try to take it. Josh finally spoke, his voice shooting up like a firecracker. You're doing this? You went to a lawyer and erased me from your life without even talking to me first. I did talk to you, I said, locking eyes with him. The first time was when you sat across from me and told me that necklace was from a New York boutique. The second time was when you took me on that little drive and hid a loan application under your seat. The third was in my own living room when you said, why can't she just die already? His face went pale, then twisted. You recorded me, he growled. You spied on me? Are you even my mother? That sentence froze me for a second. But then I stood, quiet and sure. If I were truly your mother in your eyes, I said, you wouldn't wish me dead. You wouldn't forge my signature. You wouldn't treat me like some feeble, gullible old woman. And you sure as hell wouldn't use "you're getting older" as leverage to get me to sign my life away. Chelsea opened her mouth again, but Josh raised a hand to stop her. Then he took a step toward me. His eyes flaring, voice thick with fury. You really hate me that much? You'd rather die than let your own son have anything? Karen stood up, placing herself between us. I'd think very carefully before you take another step, Josh, she said coolly. Everything you've done is documented. If she calls 911 right now, you'll be facing charges for intimidation and attempted interference with private assets. He froze mid-stride. I looked him in the eye, no fear, no shaking this time. Do you remember, I said softly, when you were a little boy? One winter you slipped on the driveway and your nose started bleeding. I carried you inside, cracked open the freezer with my bare hands and held a popsicle to your face. You were crying and you said, Mommy, don't leave me. He didn't answer. I believed for years you'd remember that moment. But everything you've done lately tells me something else. You left me a long time ago. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. I turned toward the door. Karen gathered the documents behind me. Just before we stepped outside, I looked back at him one last time. You said I'm not your mother. I paused. Well, let's stop pretending we're family then. And with that we walked out. The sun was shining. Just as I'd hoped. I didn't think Josh would come back. After everything we'd said, after the disinherited clause was made official, our relationship wasn't just legally severed. It felt like that document was the final punctuation mark in the story of our mother-son bond. But I had underestimated something about Josh. Not his sense of family. His sense of interest. 2 weeks later, I was out in the front yard watering the flowers when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize flashed across the screen. I hesitated for a second, then answered. Mom, it's me. His voice came through the signal thin and strained, like it was coming from far away, even though I knew it wasn't. "Can we talk?" he said. "Just 10 minutes. Please." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just said, "I'm home." Half an hour later his car pulled up to the curb. He'd lost weight. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, a line of stubble across his jaw. The suit jacket he wore looked like it had been balled up in the backseat for days. I didn't invite him inside. We stood on the front porch. The sun hit his forehead and he squinted, lifting a hand like someone finally forced to lower his head. "Mom, I know you're disappointed in me," he began. "But I'm in trouble." I didn't flinch. "Since when have you not come to me when you're in trouble?" He clenched his jaw. "The mortgage application, it didn't go through. The lender required a video verification. They caught the mismatch in the ID and signature. Now my account's frozen and the company's investigating me for attempted fraud. I've been suspended from work." I didn't say anything. He told it like it was happening to someone else. Like the consequences were a shock. "Chelsea," he gave a hollow laugh. "She packed a bag and went back to her mom's. Said she didn't know anything about it. That it was all my doing." I sighed. "She's not wrong. It was all your doing." He looked at me then and for a brief second I saw something that looked like desperation. Or maybe it was just regret that he'd lost his last option. "Mom, I know I messed up. I got reckless, I wasn't thinking straight. But, can you please just give me one more chance? Just this once." "What do you want, Josh?" He swallowed. "I need a guarantor. Short-term loan. Just $100,000 to get through the investigation. I swear I'll pay you back." He reached into his jacket, fumbling for something, probably a form, a piece of paper he thought would make it all sound official. I stopped him. "Do you realize," I said slowly, "that the way you're speaking right now is exactly how you spoke 5 years ago when you asked me for money for your business startup?" He froze. That was different. I didn't know what I was doing back then. "No, Josh," I said, "you've always known what you were doing. What you've never figured out is that I'm not your personal ATM. Mom, I'm serious this time." I raised a hand, my tone calm but firm. "I know you're serious. You're seriously in trouble. But I'm no longer the woman you could charm into handing over her house deed. Not anymore." He stared at me for a long second. Then finally said it. "You've changed." I nodded. I've changed in all the ways I should have years ago. I don't drop my guard just because you call me Mom. And I've learned that the word family isn't a blank check worth $800,000. His mouth opened. Maybe to argue. But nothing came out. So I kept going. "You want to call me cruel? I'm not cruel, Josh. I just learned that if I'm not strong you'll eat me alive." For a long beat we both stood there. The only sound was the sprinkler clicking from the neighbor's lawn across the street. I didn't look at him again. I just turned, walked back into the house and closed the door behind me. Through the wooden door, I heard him linger for a moment, then his footsteps crunching across the gravel as he walked away. It took me 3 full months to recover from the storm. Not the kind of recovery you can measure in bruises or stitches. This was the slow, deliberate kind, the kind that scrapes out the corners of your heart. The kind that clears the wreckage of years of silence, self-denial, and the stubborn hope that Josh would one day become someone I could trust again. When it was over I felt empty. But the kind of empty that feels like fresh air after a deep breath. Like space that's finally mine again. The trust was officially in place. The new will had been filed. And on Karen's advice, I'd signed medical directives and financial power of attorney documents to ensure that no matter what happened to me, no one would have the power to rewrite my decisions. I went to the bank and opened new accounts, completely detached from anyone else's name. When the woman at the desk asked, "Would you like to list an emergency contact?" I smiled and shook my head. "No thank you. I can handle everything myself." My life didn't suddenly become extraordinary, but it began to move to a rhythm that felt like mine. I started volunteering at the library once a week, reading to elderly patrons and helping them catalog their personal histories. I signed up for a weekend pottery class at the church. Each time my hands sank into wet clay I felt like I was reshaping more than bowls or vases. I was reshaping myself. And I did one more thing. A small act maybe, but it felt like a ceremony. At a local market I saw a young single mother selling handmade necklaces. Each piece was wrapped around a little paper tag with a name scribbled on it. I chose the simplest one, A blue stone wrapped in coarse wire. It wasn't symmetrical. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. It had character. She smiled as I picked it up. That one's called Truth, she said. I bought it without a second thought. Wore it home. And as I walked, the breeze made the stone knock gently against my chest. Like it was reminding me, you finally started living for yourself. And I made one final decision. The house would belong to no one. Not to Josh. Not to any so-called heirs. I left it in my will to a local women's shelter foundation. To become part of a long-term housing project for women who, like me, had nowhere safe to turn. But unlike me, hadn't had the time or tools to protect themselves. When Karen asked if I was certain, I gave her one sentence. This house has seen too many lies. I want it from now on to hold only truth. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, I sat on my front porch rocking chair. Children laughed in the neighbor's yard. Loretta's voice floated over the hedge. Tea this afternoon? I nodded and stood. As I did, my fingers brushed against the blue stone at my throat. It didn't sparkle like the fake diamond Josh once gave me. No one ever told me how much it was worth. But it was solid. Warm. And every time I touched it, it reminded me of one word. Freedom. I used to be the mother who couldn't see through anything. But now I'm the woman who knows exactly what's real. And what's worth holding on to. He thought I didn't see it coming. But the truth is, I knew all along. I was just waiting for him to play his final card.